Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Returning listeners, great to have you back. New listeners, really glad you joined us. You picked a great time to join us. If this is your first episode with Salty Ginger Talk, our guest today is an awesome lady named Joanne Greene. She wrote a book about a really rough experience she went through when she was actually hit by a car as she was crossing the street. And she's going to talk a little bit about her life, a couple of conversations that are super helpful, not related to her book and her experience of healing from being hit by the car, but just a super neat lady, super smart, very well spoken, very captivating, and you're going to absolutely love listening to Joanne tell her story. So, without further ado, let's bring her onto the channel now. And thanks so much for joining us here on Salty Ginger Talk.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to our conversation since we spoke a couple months ago, and you've had a busy summer, kind of traveling all over the place and seeing family and doing fun stuff. And we're just happy to have you back. So, what we usually start off with is, so our podcast is really about we want people to live a purposeful life, and they get to choose whatever that purpose is. It's not our job to say you should be a ballerina or a plumber or an attorney or an actor or whatever. You make your choices, but you should be doing it with intention, and you should be pursuing something that matters to you. And if you're not, I think you got to take a look at it because you're not as happy as you should be and you're not as fulfilled as you should be. And that's all we try to do. And by way of that, we have awesome people like you come on and talk about your life story and what you've learned through the good and bad things that have happened to you in life. So we usually just start with like a brief overview of start from high school, talk your way through your adult life, very broad strokes, and then we go back and dive into deeper into the inflection points. And you have a couple of really serious inflection points, which is what we're here to talk a lot about. But if you wouldn't mind just doing a broad overview, that'd be awesome.
Happy to do that. I grew up just outside of Boston in a town called Brookline, Massachusetts, in a community that was largely Jewish, which I am. And so it was a somewhat insular community. And I was the youngest of three. I was an oops baby. My parents were 40 and 44. My siblings, when I was born, were 13 and 8.
Mm.
So I never quite felt like I fit into my family. My mother, my sister, and my brother were all math people, very linear thinkers. Things were black and white. Ironically, they were all three Scorpios. So if you know anything about the astrological signs, that tells you something. I was much more like my dad, artistic, creative, kind of not in the box, all over the place. Didn't really feel understood. Spent a lot of time in my imagination as a kid. Was definitely a child of the 60s. I was in high school from the fall of 67 to the spring of 71,
Mm.
um, just outside of a major city in the Northeast. So I was an aspiring hippie, or I was a hippie. I'm not sure which to say, but it was very much about counterculture, and our tribe is going to do better than you people did, and we're not going to do the things that you did, and we're going to do it differently. We're going to end this foolish war, and women are going to have rights, and on and on and on. I'd been a good student. I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to go to an academic university, but I wanted to major in theater. And so I looked at what my options were. My parents gave me a 1,000-mile limit, and Northwestern University fit all of the bills. It was 1,000 miles away, near a city, but not in the city. Phenomenal theater department and excellent school academically. I went there and had kind of a mini nervous breakdown.
Mm.
At the time, 1971, people didn't know what anorexia was. Now it's kind of a commonly known illness. And I had been on a diet and I kept going. So my first couple years in college were very much about trying to heal myself through therapy and everything else. A very, very serious disease. If your listeners don't know about it, it is related to, it's an anxiety disorder, but the death rate still with good therapies now, when I had it, there were no good therapies. Now the death rate is still close to 20%. So very, very serious illness. I came back to Boston, and by this point, I had switched out of theater into radio, TV, film. Um, had a jazz show on my new college radio station. I transferred from Northwestern to Emerson. And as soon as I graduated, I went out to California to visit my sister and brother-in-law and their new baby. And I said, oh, this is where I need to be. So I packed up just after my car was stolen. I said it was a sign that I was being absolved of my material possessions and I should move out west. I did, and I started a career in radio, which continued for about 20 something years. So I had a wonderful time in San Francisco working at a rock and roll radio station. It's where I met my now husband of 45 years. We're the only relationship that lasted from that era in that group of people. But when you say, when I say I worked in rock and roll radio in the 70s in San Francisco, I'm sure some images come to mind. Those are true. That all happened. All of it happened. Um,
So you
I
know what
was,
I think when you say that, the first thing that pops into my head is Grand Funk Railroad. We're an American band. Like
well,
that's
there
the
you
way I
go.
think of. Yeah, that's exactly how I think of
Okay.
rock and roll. And I was a kid in the 70s. I was born in 1972, but I have fond memories of growing up in Portland, Oregon. So anyhow, please continue.
Oh, yeah. Well, we played all kinds of music, including in those days, it was this, other British invasion punk was just starting. So it was like Stray Cats and Dire Straits and Blondie and all that stuff. Anyway,
Mm.
I wasn't involved in the music. I was doing the news and producing issue-oriented programs, which I continued to do for a long time. We got married, had kids. I was very much focused on doing, 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 doing. And there are many of us who are this way. If you are a person in constant you're one. Okay. So if you're a person in constant motion, it's a way of avoiding dealing with things sometimes or feeling things sometimes. And I was that person. I had to be as close to perfect as I could be on all fronts. So that meant trying to be the best daughter, the best sister, the best wife, the best friend, the best mother, the best citizen, the best volunteer, involved in the kids' schools, involved in my synagogue, all of those things. And as a very wise woman who's my physician at the time explained to me in my mid 50s, when I started kind of feeling some of the effects of having swept so much under the rug, she says, yeah, that's what happens. High achieving people continue to sweep things under the rug. And later in life, you start tripping over those things and you need to deal with them one way or another. So I did the best I could and continued on. Didn't change my ways that much. And then the story that I'm guessing we're going to talk about today is the big event that changed my life, which came after a very tough period in which I lost my mother, my sister, and my brother all within 4 years.
Ooh.
And my mother and my sister within 5 months. And they both lived near me. And I was extremely close with both of them and helping to take care of both of them as they got sicker and sicker and then ultimately passed away. And then out of nowhere, less than 4 years later, my brother had a hemorrhagic stroke, same thing my dad had died of at the same age. I've now outlived all of them, not my mother, but my sister, my brother, and my father. And that really brought me to my knees. It was extremely rough, and we can certainly talk about grief and what I learned about grief over that time because it was a lot. But I kind of went back to my ways of going a million miles an hour and producing, doing more than was required of me, that sort of thing, and feeling like that's where my self-worth came from.
Mm.
And then, as the universe would have it, often we get the lessons we need in life. And I was crossing a street in a crosswalk in broad daylight on October 3rd, 2012, trying to get home in time to see the beginning of the debate between then candidate Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, to give you a sense of where in history this was. And a car stopped for me. And just as I got in front of that car, I heard what sounded like an enormous explosion. It wasn't an explosion, it was the sound of a truck going 50 miles an hour, slamming into the car that had stopped for me. The car that had stopped was a sedan. It hit me because it was a sedan and not an SUV. I flew up onto the hood of the car. Had it been an SUV, I would have gone under and been immediately killed.
Mm.
First miracle. And then she was catapulted 50 feet down the street with me on the hood. I banging my head against the windshield. I had not lost consciousness. And then at some point, I fell off onto the street. Um, what I knew was that I was alive and not much else. And I couldn't speak. I was in shock and was, ultimately, um, the ambulance came, the police came, all of that. I was taken to the hospital. I had 4 pelvic fractures and the whole right side, all my soft tissue was crushed. And it was a long recovery. But most importantly, to the purposes of our conversation, is that it stopped me dead in my tracks. I could not move. I could not do anything for myself. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't get to the bathroom. I couldn't do anything. Totally dependent on others. And I had a big choice to make, and it wasn't really even a conscious choice. Somehow my survivor instincts clicked in, and I said, I'm going to do this. I can do this. And that became my mantra. And, there were many, many times where I was ready to quit and, fold, as it were, when one plays cards. But I didn't. And I took that opportunity to learn what stillness was all about. Finally learned how to meditate because it was kind of all I could do. And got the kind of help I needed, physical therapy and trauma therapy, because when something like that happens, you just replay it again and again in your mind, and your fears are completely irrational and out of proportion. And I didn't want to be stuck with all of that for the rest of my life. And I am not. So, spoiler alert, I made a complete recovery and went back to work full time, which nobody expected me to do. And then a series of other things happened. And as life would have it, so I got to practice my new skills. And I've always been a writer, but never this kind of a writer. And I decided that I had a book in me. And the book was going to be sharing what I had learned in the hopes that I could help someone or some people. And, by reading the reviews of my book on Amazon, I see that I've helped a lot of people, and just the reports that I get back, because there are some very specific things to know and to keep in mind when you're faced with life's most challenging junctures. And I want to share that with the world.
Wow, that is a tale. And I want to save kind of the last half of our conversation to be just about your book and your experience with the accident. But you've talked about so much interesting stuff. I want to talk about some of that first, if that's okay. How comfortable are you talking about your experience with anorexia? It's not a topic that we've covered in any depth on the podcast, and I think that might be very useful for some of our listeners.
I'm very comfortable. I brought it up, and I I really have no secrets. But and again, anything I can do to help anyone, and really often, who we're talking to is not the person who has anorexia, but the loved ones
Mm.
uh, who are desperate to help and don't know how to help. So I'm happy to talk about it and answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you just said there because just personally, I have a situation like that with a family member right now that like just is struggling. And they're not without reason, but like they're not doing a good job of it. They're not finding their way through the forest. And my wife is by far the most emotionally intelligent person that I know. I am not a touchy-feely guy in any way, shape, or form, but
I don't buy that.
no, it's a,
Here you are having these kinds of conversations.
well, so that's a yeah, fair enough. Um, maybe I should say it doesn't impact me the way I see it impact other people. That's probably a better way to say it. I think that's a good call out by you. Um, but I think that's really important for people to keep in mind is that a lot of the exposing yourself and learning things is good because you never know when you're going to need them, whether it's for you or someone that you care about. And so that's kind of what we try to do on the podcast. And that's why I wanted to talk about this particular subject because we've never had anyone come on and talk about it before. So you had said that it's more about anxiety than anything else. What do you think? So you said you were on a diet and you kept going.
Yeah.
How do you think you kind of slid into where it got out of control on you? How did that
Sure.
happen?
So it's an obsessive disorder, and it's really not about food. Food becomes the arena in which it plays out, and in part that is a response to society, and in part it's a response to messages. It's far more common amongst females, this disease, although young men in particular, sometimes develop it. Eating disorders in general fall more heavily on women. Um, there's this message that women are given right from the beginning. It's all about how you look. Thin is better. Watch what you eat. I was not immune to those messages, both from my mom, who used to always talk about how much willpower she had, how she didn't need to eat dessert, how she never wavered from her 130 pounds her whole life, all that kind of stuff,
Mm.
pressure. I was a more adventurous kind of person. And I would say also I like adventure and I like extremes. And so she would always try to control my eating. But I think so that might be why it manifested itself in the food arena rather than becoming a gambling addiction or a drug addiction or
Yeah.
alcoholism or any of that. Partially my family. Um, I was for sure a part of the Twiggy generation. Um, there was no such thing as too thin. And anorexia often strikes when women, I'll say women, even though there are men who get it, but
Sure. Yeah. Get it.
during times of transition, puberty is a big one. In my case, it was end of high school going off to college. That's another common time. So it's often when one is transitioning and feeling anxious about the transition and then trying to hold on to control. So I think I lost so much weight that my body wasn't really even looking like a woman's body anymore. I was looking almost like a little boy's body. In fact,
Mm.
I remember buying clothes in the little boys department. I went from being about 125 pounds as a senior in high school to at my lowest weighing 73
Oh
as a
my.
freshman in college. Yeah, yeah, really seriously life threatening, very serious.
Yes.
In those days, they did not have the field of psychological therapy called eating disorders therapy. It just didn't exist yet. And so, what anybody with a serious mental illness, which this is, was referred to was Freudian psychoanalysis, where you lie on a couch and free associate, and the therapist says nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. Occasionally, well, how do you feel about that? Well, how did that make you feel? That's it. No guidance, no feedback. So I kind of feel like I'm the luckiest gal in the world to have been able to move through that phase of my life. It took about 2 years. Um, and, you know, I still have, some residues of control issues, but not around food. I'm good with food. And I haven't been overweight or underweight in my entire adult life. I'm fine, just fit and healthy, and I eat really well. So, what I would say though is oftentimes parents and others are try to get the person who is anorexic to eat. They're
Yeah.
like, eat that, as though that's going to solve the problem. No, that doesn't solve the problem at all. you have to get the person to really, and that's why therapy is so important, really focus on their feelings, because the behavior of food avoidance, or it might be bulimia where they're gorging and purging, or it might be obesity where they're just gorging. All of that is a substitute for feeling what they're feeling. They just shift the attention instead of sharing what they're feeling or even allowing themselves to feel it, negative feelings I'm talking about. They just mask it with this behavior, punishing yourself or, whatever it is. And I had a very warped view of what it meant to be kind to myself. I did not know, in fact, I really didn't know that what I was doing was not helpful. I thought it was helpful. So
Mm.
it's a long recovery. Many people don't ever recover. I know people who live with this, manage it, but live with it throughout their lives. And I'm very, very grateful that I don't.
Well, Karen Carpenter died from anorexia, didn't she?
She sure did. She sure
Yeah,
did.
it was
And
a,
here's a crazy story for you. So I was on the radio at the time when she died. And her therapist, Stephen Levin Cron in New York, wrote a book called The Best Little Girl in the World about her, but it didn't talk about her, but it was about her.
hmm.
And um, when the publicist reached out to me to interview him on my radio show, I said, and this was when I was only in my 20s, so it wasn't that long after I had been sick. I said, I am a former anorexic. And long story short, not only did I interview him, but they had me appear with him on national television talk shows because they couldn't get somebody who was currently um, battling the disease, but the next closest thing was to get somebody who had experienced it to talk about it with him. So I ended up going on this was before your time, but there was a Tom Snyder show called The Tomorrow Show.
I remember Tom Snyder. Yep.
Yeah, so I was on that show with him. And
Yep.
yeah. So you're right. Karen Carpenter died of it and a whole lot of other people. I mean, the death rate's ridiculous. And she obviously had all the resources in the world to get help.
Yeah. It's funny. I heard a rabbi that talked about this once and it really resonated with me. It wasn't that long ago. It was maybe a couple years ago, but he said something very similar to what you just said, which is you're actually, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's drugs, it doesn't matter what the addiction or the problem is, you're not actually addicted to that substance. Are there physical manifestations of taking that substance? Sure. Is there withdrawal? Sure. But it's not that that keeps bringing you back because those are just symptoms of an underlying issue. And until you get to the underlying issue, you can't get rid of the symptoms. And that really resonated with me. Like, hey, it's not a matter of this isn't a willpower like you just talked about, eat some food. Thanks. Appreciate that. Didn't realize that was why I wasn't being able to keep weight on my body. Appreciate that. My dad did something similar. I mean, it's nothing nearly as serious, but I went through college on a baseball scholarship, and he was my coach. My dad was the stereotypical evil little league coach from the movies. My dad was that guy in real life. And so I was a pitcher, and like when I would walk guys, he'd come out and say, "Throw strikes." I'm like, yeah, I get the object. Like I've demonstrated I'm pretty good at this. Maybe you could tell me why I'm not throwing strikes. That would be helpful. But it's a similar thing, right? It's not helpful to push those things. So in your situation, there was no eating disorder specific therapy. Now we're in 2025. What would you say to someone who's struggling with anorexia or someone who has someone close to them that's struggling with it? What's a good place for them to start to tackle it?
I would absolutely, and I have a very good friend who's a psychologist, and she maintains this. You should only see a therapist who has deep experience in eating disorders. It is, it's dangerous to do anything else. So
Mm.
find someone who specializes in eating disorders. Generally, what they'll do nowadays is they'll put a team of people together. So you'll have a physician, you'll have a nutritionist. There will be a team of people helping you, and it's expensive and it's worth it. And it's no guarantee, but there are just many different fronts on which ideally you want to address what's going on because it will get worse if unaddressed. It will get worse if not properly addressed. So there's a lot to know for the professionals who deal with you. And, I think it's tougher when you're not in a big city. So I think people who live in or near big cities have access to that kind of help. I think probably tougher for people who live in rural areas. But I would do a lot of research. Now we also have so much available to us, at our fingertips. Back in those days, we had no internet and there weren't books written for the public. There were, the medical profession knew about anorexia for sure, but the public didn't. And so what was written wasn't written for lay people. But it's a very different world today. And there are all sorts of organizations, but I would absolutely not scrimp on therapy.
Got it. That's super super useful, and appreciate you sharing that perspective on it. That's good for listeners to know. Look, if you got problems, you don't have to tackle them on your own, and that's the world that we live in. To
And
Joanne's point,
also, I have to say one more thing.
yeah, go ahead.
Drop drop the shame.
Hmm.
Because, in our culture, there's a lot of shame that goes with mental illness and always has. And we really need to work very hard to see it as an illness. Like if you had diabetes, would you say, no, I don't need insulin? No, you would go get insulin. Same with a mental illness. You need help, maybe medication. I certainly didn't take any medication back then. We didn't have the kinds of medications we have now, but maybe that's an option. But I knew that my mom didn't even tell her sister what was going on with me, even
Hmm.
though they were very close. And I think it was from shame. So, which didn't help me to heal, right? It's not like I was choosing this. I was not choosing this. I was not choosing anything about this. And no one ever is, no one chooses to be mentally ill. People don't choose depression. It is critical not to say to people, snap out of it. Or as my mom used to say to me, well, think about this person. They have something to be depressed about. Well, great. Then, oh, they're entitled to their feelings, but I'm not entitled to mine. Right.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things I think, particularly because this strikes young women. Our mothers have a major role to play. And I think there are also support groups for parents. I would look into that. And to start to discuss some things that maybe led to some of this and just, love and support your person through the struggle because it is absolutely a struggle. And there's a lot of denial that comes with it and lying. Anorexics will always tell you that they ate. They didn't.
Mm. Yeah, that's a very common behavior from people that have problems that don't want to admit or are ashamed of the fact that they have problems, right? And to your
Or
point,
can't control it, really can't control it. It's not
sure.
just, I've encountered alcoholics in my life. It's not so much in my family, but certainly in my adult life. And I mean, people have the absolute best intentions. I'm never going to drink again. And then one thing or another happens. And I don't call that weakness. I call that part of an illness.
Yeah, white knuckling things is not the solution, right? I'm just going to bite the bullet and bear down and I'll make it because I've got mental toughness. Okay,
Well,
whatever.
here's the thing, you can quit drinking, you can quit smoking, you can't quit eating.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
That's right.
so you're constantly reminded, 3 times a day. It's like everything involves eating. Celebration involves eating. Sad gatherings involve eating. Everywhere you go, people are eating, 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 and indulging and saying, oh, just this once, So you can't escape it. So eating disorders are particularly insidious because it's not like you can just stop.
Yeah, there's no way, there's no way to just cut it out of your life over time, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Well, thank you so much for talking about that and sharing your perspective on it because, like I say, if there's listeners out there that are dealing with something similar, I think there's Joanne just gave you really good experience and counsel on how to attack it. And like we say on this podcast a lot, the best disinfectant is always sunlight. You got to get shit out in the open if you're going to deal with it. Like, there's just no other way. You can't keep it hidden. You can't keep it from people. You got to talk to somebody about it's a starting point. You might talk to the wrong person, but at least start talking to someone. Maybe they can get you connected to the right person, get you headed down the right path. But keeping it bottled up and dealing with it yourself is a recipe for disaster. And we don't want that for people. We want people to have happy, productive lives. And you got to deal with your shit if you're going to have a happy, productive life, plain and simple. So,
I couldn't
um,
agree more.
Thanks. Moving to a more fun topic, I want to talk a little about working at a rock and roll station in the 70s because that was kind of the wild, wild west for rock and roll. And like you were talking about, some punk rock a little bit there too. And what was without naming names, what was the wildest or craziest experience that you witnessed or were a part of in those days?
I don't even mind naming names because so sadly, most of my colleagues are no longer with us because
Mm.
of their outrageous behaviors and or lifestyles. Um, oh, there was the day that the disc jockey who was on the radio, it was afternoon drive, and he was tripping on acid and he thought it would be funny. He asked to see my news copy. So when a news anchor, at least in those days, goes on the air, I would have sheets that I had, typed up what I wanted to say, but also pieces of wire copy that I had circled and underlined because we partially had lived. Anyway, he asked to see it and I handed it to him. Big mistake. He rolled it up like a joint and lit it on fire, excuse me, just as the sounder came on that it was time for me to do the
Oh,
news.
jeez.
That was
So
pretty
you're winging it.
outrageous. I did. I did. And I somehow got through that newscast, but barely. So that was, excuse me, one story that popped into my head. I interviewed so many incredible people over the years. So that was, and the famous people weren't always the most memorable interviews. So sometimes it was just a surprise where I would, really feel like I had been in the presence of greatness or learned something that I hadn't learned any other way from someone. But, I mean, I mean, I could run down lists of people who I interviewed, but, that's just name dropping. But it was
Yeah,
quite a
totally.
time. Yeah, it was quite a time. Drugs were definitely a part of the everyday functioning of the radio station. It was all about the music, but in my role, it was all about the truth because I was doing news and I was doing features and talk shows about, and at the time, it was the anti-nuclear movement.
Mm.
And it was also about the arms race. This is even before the environmental movement and certainly women's movement, women's rights, always. I did feminist talk shows, a number of different ones over the years. And, really trying to avoid in the news talking about the crime blotter, but really more talking about issues. And in those days, the ratings would come out and the new program director would fire everybody. And so eventually I got fired, even though I had survived a number of rounds of the firing. And when I was fired, I was told that I was too issue oriented, which I kind of thought was akin to telling an architect he's too design oriented. Like, what am I supposed to be?
Right.
Event oriented? Not yeah. So it was a crazy time. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. It was great. It was a blast. Free tickets
How
to
do you
everything.
how do you feel about the current environment of news today? Like you've been in it for a while, and it's very different now than it's ever been. How do you feel about what's going on today?
Well, there's no real attempt at objectivity.
Mm,
It's a corporate adventure these days, and you know, you we all curate our own feeds, so we hear what we want to hear, and it's a big echo chamber. And if you're listening only to Fox News, chances are you're going to develop a certain set of viewpoints and vote a certain way. And if you're listening only to MSNBC, you're going to get a different set of viewpoints. On the other hand, they're so diametrically opposed to each other that if one resonates with you, you probably can't listen to the other one for more than 5 minutes. Um, I think journalism is in a very precarious place right now. I'm very worried. I mean, I'm sure you don't want to get political, but like the defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting terrifies me, particularly in rural areas where people depend on it and that's where they get their local news. Um, you know, had some things got a little too woke and a little too left, yeah, I would in my opinion, yeah. But um, I think the idea of like rewriting history, which is what's happening right now, like anything that's not pleasant about American history is being erased. I have a big problem with that. And I get my news from a variety of different sources, but not the radio and not really television either.
mm. Yeah, it's super interesting. I agree with you 100% on everything you just said, actually. As it relates to, erasing unpleasant stuff, I don't understand why it's like more than one thing can be true at the same time. You know what I mean? So, like, did colonists come over here and kill the Native Americans and take their land? Yes, like that's undisputable. That's what happened. I know, right?
Joe, you're spreading negativity. I'm tongue in cheek here. Yes. And not only that, but I mean, the concept that we are going to further whitewash what happened to African Americans in this country as if we haven't already done irreparable damage. Now we're going to, go in and curate what the African American Smithsonian, the story they're telling, and every American should go and see that museum. It's extraordinary. Every American should also try to find their way to Montgomery, Alabama, and see what the Equal Justice Initiative has done to tell the story of lynching in America. Yeah, there's some ugly chapters in America and everywhere else because human beings are always balancing the inclination to do good and the inclination to do evil. I mean, that's just part of the human condition. So to tell a story that America is only great and it was always great is, pardon the expression, bullshit. And I think very, very dangerous. And I have grandchildren and I'm very cautious about what books I buy them because I want them to know what's happened so that they don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. My approach, which clearly I think is right because it's my approach, is lay out the facts dispassionately. And I say dispassionately, but like you talked about that's so I use lynching as an example when people say, I've heard people make the comment today, the country's never been more racist than it is now. I'm like, whoa, time out. Like, I got it. We got problems. There's there's racism. I fully acknowledge that. However, you do remember the time where we used to keep people in chains and kill them if they ran, and we hung people from trees because of their skin color? You remember that happened in our country, right? Not just a couple of times, but by the millions, by the thousands as it relates to lynchings. Like, that was pretty racist. I think that was pretty bad.
I believe that you can't grow up in this society and not be somewhat racist because it's a society of white supremacy. I'm not talking about white supremacists. That's
Sure.
different. White people are advantaged, period. I go out, nobody knows I'm Jewish, right? They could be a rabid anti-Semite, but I look like a white person because I am a white person. And so I don't get judged just by walking down the street. But, you know, every black person does. It's just fact. That's just fact. People are like a little bit cautious. I mean, white people. So anyway,
Mm.
I just think we have a lot of work to do. And some of us are doing it, and some of us are undoing the good work that others have done. And
Undoing, I like that.
and I think I'm an optimist. So I think pendulums swing, and I think we are way over to one side right now, and I'm very hopeful that it'll swing the other way.
Sure. So yeah,
Some
I
other
think my
way.
only yeah, I think my only comment on that, I was fortunate that I played sports, and sports is a pretty unifying activity. And I
Absolutely.
was, I was lucky that I played at a, I went through college, so I got to play with lots of different people from lots of different places, and I played with people that were African American. I played with people that were Mexican, Cuban, from the Dominican, Asian, you name it. I played with them. And that doesn't make me any better, worse, less. I just was exposed to more than a lot of people have been. Different cultures, different approaches, different ideas, et cetera, et cetera. And
Here's my
so,
feeling on that, Joe. I would say we have to be face to face with
yeah, that's
people
right.
because where does hate come from? Fear. Where does
Yeah, that's
fear
right.
come from? Not knowing.
That's
If we
exactly right.
don't know, if we don't know people, if we haven't sat with people, if we haven't had a conversation about the our shared humanity, our shared challenges, our shared struggles, because we're all human. I ran Jewish programs at a JCC here where I live for 11 years, and one of the programs I initiated was called Salam Shalom, Speaking of Peace, and it was a way of bringing the Muslim community and the Jewish community together because we didn't know each other. We
Mm,
never crossed paths. And, because of what's happened in Israel, Palestine, there was tremendous mistrust of us. And we did a lot of work and sat down. And I remember the very first event where we had people mixed at different tables. I sat next to a woman who was Muslim, and she's, wearing a hijab and the whole thing. We were in the same basic age group. And we ended up in this really wonderful discussion about how our kids aren't as connected to our religion as we are. And how does that feel? And what do you think in terms of your grandchildren? And what's your role? And when do you say something? And when do you hold back? We had the same challenge,
yep.
the same challenge. And yet, to look at us, we came from two different worlds, but not so different when you start talking about what are you really dealing with in life. So, um, yeah, I think you're lucky to have had all that exposure. And I think it's important to live in communities that are more integrated for that very reason. We are a nation made up of people from so many places.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things I try to call out to people when they try to compare the United States to whatever their version of Xanadu is. Like that, it's not a really good comparison because there's not another country like the United States where you've got so many different cultures, 300, close to 350 million people now. And it's not easy, but it's not as hard as we make it, like if you just talk to people and show some humanity, and look, not everyone deserves to be treated great. If someone's a jerk, I got it. You don't have to be great to a jerk, but you don't have to go to war with a jerk. Like, just move on. Like, it's okay to just not have an opinion and say, "Hey, sorry it didn't work out. Nice knowing you. Peace out." Like, I just don't get wasting time on that stuff. I got so many awesome people in my life and so many awesome experiences in my life. I don't want to waste time on that stupid, like, these people go back and forth on the internet. Like, what are you doing? How long does it take you to type that thing out? Go do something fun. Go spend some time with your spouse. Go play golf. Go on a hike. Go sailing. Go in your garden. Do something better than arguing with a random person on the internet. What the hell is going on? I don't understand it. But anyhow, so let's move a little bit forward. You had a really rough stretch there where you lost three very close family members. You said your mom, your sister, and your brother. within 4 years, and your mom and your sister within 5 months of each other.
Yep. Yeah. And it wasn't, it's so interesting. We talk about just the losing of them. It's everything that led up to it that was so challenging and difficult.
Sure.
But yeah, my mom lived a long life. She lived to 92, and it was really good that she died before my siblings. So she didn't have to go through that grief.
Hmm.
Um, and during that last year, we were really concerned about what was going to happen first because my sister, had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and prognosis for that's not great. And she was constantly in treatment or dealing with something, surgery or whatever. My brother's death was completely out of nowhere. So that was a real shock. But people always say, what's worse, right? Watching somebody be sick and be in pain and wither away, or the sudden shock of he's dead. So yeah, it's all bad.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Um, how did that change your perspective on life at that point?
Well, it suddenly threw me, the baby of the family, into the role of being matriarch of the
Hmm.
family. My brother was married 3 times, had 5 kids, and at that point already he had 5 grandchildren. And my sister had 2 kids and no grandchildren yet, but I was the keeper of the family traditions, the rituals. Everybody spread out across the country. And I had a big role to play of bringing people together, and I still do, and I take it really seriously, and I think it's a privilege. So that's one thing. And then the other thing was to make sure that joy was at a part of every gathering. And even, for my certainly for my brother's funeral, was, and the subsequent time that we shared as a family, trying to laugh about things too. There's nothing you can do. You must accept that death is a part of life. And you have to grieve. You can't rush the grieving process. It's really important. I have found, and I have learned from experts also, that everybody's grieving is different. Everybody's grieving process is different. A year after my mom and sister died, I was still having a tough time. And I went to see a therapist, and I said, I don't understand what's going on. It's been a year. And she said, where'd you get the idea that it was supposed to take a year? And I said, well, partly in my religion, we have this 7 days, 30 days, and a year.
Hmm.
And she said, yeah, well, you're also recovering from everything that led up to their deaths, all the time you were taking care of them, all the anxiety about how it was going to play out and what your role was going to, it's complicated, and you can't rush it and you can't skip steps because it'll come back and bite you. So, um, grieving is real, and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. One way that people don't always know about, but I want to put it out there, is fatigue. It is incredibly fatiguing, and people who are grieving often say, I'm so exhausted. I don't know why I'm so exhausted. And that's why, because grieving is fatiguing, just fact. And so get extra rest, get extra sleep. Don't force yourself to go and be in places that are going to make you feel worse. Take the time. Just take the time, because time is the best healer. Eventually, the pain turns into the love, or the pain makes way for just the good memories and the love to bubble up. The things you struggled with that person become less and less important over time if you deal with them. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. And it feels to me like as I witness this stuff, um, so doing the podcast is super interesting to me. So like I think I told you, like my real job, I'm the CEO of a company that owns and operates grocery stores in Chicago. And so I do the podcast because I love doing the podcast. Like that's why I do it. And I meet such interesting people, and I get to learn so much from the guests that come on our show. And that whole that whole process is something that I don't know if it scares people or if they don't know how to process it, but it seems, and you've talked about it actually, you've referenced it a couple times in our conversation already, in terms of being willing to acknowledge and accept those feelings and or sit with those feelings and allow yourself. And I know we'll talk about it when we get into the rest of your story in your book and your whole experience with the car accident. But I find it so interesting that it's such a universal challenge for people. Going back to our conversation earlier, like it just seems like it's really hard for people to accept those things.
So I
Do you,
think
do
it
you
depends on your different cultures have different approaches to death. And so, and I'm very grateful for the approach that my culture and religion take. That doesn't solve everything, but that was a good foundation. People show up, you spend a week really doing nothing. People bring food. They don't bring flowers because you then watch flowers die. You don't need to watch
Mm.
something else die. You don't need to have one more thing to take care of at that moment. Food is good. And just people listening, letting the bereaved person call the shots and do the talking, but maybe ask them, tell me about the person so that it gets them talking about the person. But I think that people are afraid of pain. Why wouldn't we be? It hurts. We want to avoid it at all costs. But what I've learned about grief is that there are no shortcuts. You've got to feel the grief before you can come out the other side. You've got to. I don't care if you're a big tough guy, a football player, whatever. It's part of the human condition. We love, and this is the price we pay for loving. We grieve, and loss is a part of life. And the better we get at coping with loss, the easier our lives will be because loss is a given. It's going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, for sure. And look, the only thing I'll add to that is it's worth it. I'm fortunate that I learned or knew at a very young age that life was way more about relationships and experiences than it was about money or material things or those. Like I've never chased those things. Relationships have always been very important to me. Now it's my own warped little version of what I what I think relationship should be. So I'm certainly not the arbiter of what good and bad relationships should look like. But I just knew that I liked having people that were important to me. That's what made me feel the best. That's what I enjoyed the most in life, or experiences with people that I enjoyed being with. Like those are the things that I crave. I don't crave an expensive car. I don't, and I never did, or a big house. And I don't know why. I don't know. It's probably some combination of nature or nurture. But my whole long-winded point here is, I agree with everything Joanne just said, and I would just add, it's worth it. It's worth the shit you go through when it goes bad because the good times are so much better. And it's hard to remember that sometimes when things go bad, but it's true.
I think we're all works in progress. I know I
Yeah.
am. And one thing I learned from my mom, who continued to grow right up until the end in so many ways and be exposed to new ideas and new approaches to things rather than saying, this is who I am and this is how I do it. She would listen and consider. And um, so I hope to be that way too. One of my daughters-in-law recently told me that she's so grateful that I'm her mother-in-law because she talks to her friends, and she said, "You're the only one who accepts feedback." And I think that that was a wonderful thing to hear. But it also supported what I know to be true, which is her children are not my children, they're her children.
Yes.
I'm the grandparents, so I need to do it her way and my son's way. And if there are things I'm doing that are irritating, I want to know about it so I can amend my behavior.
Yes, I love that approach. And it's funny, we talked before we started recording. My youngest son just got engaged and they're doing the wedding planning now. And of course, there's lots of people with lots of opinions and this just blah 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 blah. And I've said nothing and will continue to say nothing. And my mom actually said, my son's name is Damien, and she said, "Well, what would you tell Damien?" And I said, I wouldn't tell Damien anything. I'm not Damien. Like I got married. I'm sitting next to her. She's right here. That's remember you were there. Um, and she said, but what if he asked you? I would tell him that he should talk to his fiance and they should make a decision that works for them. It's not my place to make the decisions or recommendations or offer unsolicited advice because the advice that I give them is probably worth what they paid for it. You know, I'm not in their relationship. I don't understand. Nor should I be. Like I've got my own relationship. That's what I do. That's what my wife and I do. So that's the approach I try to take. But I'm happy to listen. And if he asked my opinion, I would share it, but like dispassionately, not you should do this. Um, but
Good for
yeah,
you. You're sowing the seeds for a wonderful relationship with them.
yeah, I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to, I want to be a big part of their lives. I want them to come talk to me about stuff. I want to be able to help when they need help, and I don't want them to be afraid or intimidated to seek out that counsel. And not for nothing. I always, and I shouldn't say always. I try to avoid global statements because they're rarely true, but I defer most of the time to people that are older than me simply because they have more life experience. And that's not everybody. Like, if you've got, like, if someone was 75 and ran the Ku Klux Klan, I would not defer to their judgment. However, outside those outliers, there's a lot of value in people that have been on the earth longer than you. They've experienced a lot of things, they've seen more things, and they can bring a perspective that you don't understand yet because you haven't been as far down the road as they have. And I'm hopeful that they're willing to tap into that knowledge that I have, but that'll only happen if I foster an environment that lets it happen.
Good luck with that because my experience has been that they have the internet in their pocket and they think, I don't need how you did it. I need to know how the best experts today, and I don't need you to help me know that. So
Look, that's probably a better route for them to take anyways. They'd probably get better advice from Google than me anyhow. So yeah, so let's dig into the big stuff here. You kind of walked us through the scenario on the day that your life-changing accident happened. And what what's the best place to start here? When you got Were you conscious the whole time? Did you lose consciousness or you were aware? You said you were aware at least part of the time. Were you aware the whole
well,
time?
yeah, I did not lose consciousness at all. That's the good news and the bad news.
Mm,
The good news in that I didn't have a traumatic brain injury. The bad news in that I remember every single detail because I was awake.
yeah, for sure. Did you think at any point that you weren't going to make it?
No, I did not. And that is a testament to my, I think, generally optimistic nature and survival instinct. In fact, though, I almost didn't make it because they couldn't control the internal bleeding for a
Mm,
couple of days when I was in the hospital, and they were prepping me for surgery, but didn't want to do surgery because once they get in there, they don't know where the blood's coming from. So I was closer to death than I knew. I didn't know this until after the fact, because my brother-in-law is a physician and my really close friend was a surgeon, and they were both kind of around and in the picture and told me afterward
mm,
how dicey it was. But I never thought that. I didn't. When I didn't die in the accident, I thought I was in the clear. I didn't realize that I could bleed out.
sure. Yep. Do you recall the first time you saw your husband after the accident? You'd been
Oh,
married
yeah.
30 plus, married 30 plus years at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we had. We just celebrated 45 and this happened in 2012. So yeah.
Yep.
Um, well, first of all, and this is all in the book by accident, my husband had an unusual childhood. His parents, he was the youngest of three also. His parents were killed in a head-on collision with a drunk driver when he was 7, both
Oh
of
my
them.
gosh.
So he was orphaned at the age of 7, and his grandparents moved in and continued to raise him. So when the accident happened, it happened right in front of the where I worked at the time. And so there were people around who witnessed the accident who knew me. And somebody came running over and said, "We have to call Fred. Fred's my husband." And she said, "What's his number?" And somehow I was able to say his phone number. She dialed it and said, "Joanne's been in an accident. She's okay, but here she is," and handed me the phone. And I just said, all I said was, "Meet me at the hospital." And then I dropped the phone. I was, in shock at the time.
Sure.
But I was so aware immediately that this was the phone call he was never supposed to get. It had already happened. His parents, I mean, not that I was killed, but, you know, I just felt like, I am so sorry to do this to you again. And when I first saw him, he was standing there as my ambulance pulled up and they started to take me out of the ambulance. I saw his face right there, and I felt much better seeing him, but I also felt so sad for him. He
Hmm.
was wonderful though. I mean, he is the star of the show when it comes to this book. He completely rose to the occasion. He had never been a caretaker, anything like that. And he was amazing, and he got me through.
Wow. How long were you in the hospital?
5 days.
5 days. So they got the internal bleeding under control. They'd kind of assessed your injuries. They did whatever they could at that
Pain
point.
control. A lot of it was just pain control.
Yep.
I didn't have any surgery. I didn't need any surgery. So it was really a combination of getting the internal bleeding under control and controlling the pain, because the pain was mind-boggling. And then even when I went home, it was mind-boggling. I was on, heavy duty drugs.
Yeah.
And then I was able to get off of them in 3 weeks. So I knew that I had to. I hate those drugs. I mean, you need them when you need them, but they wreak havoc with your system.
Yep. Yep. They make you loopy. You don't have your use of your faculties. Like they
Oh, I
just,
didn't have any faculties at that point anyway. I mean, none. I was a wreck. I was just a train wreck. And I was either in excruciating pain or completely traumatized for those first few weeks.
you had
Um,
talked earlier about kind of reliving the accident. Was that a constant thing that happened when you first got home?
I mean, many, many times a day. Yeah, many, many times a day. Sometimes just my brain doing it. Sometimes, somebody would turn the TV on and there would be a car accident or something on the TV. There's a lot of car accidents on TV. I wasn't aware of that until, yeah. So, sometimes or somebody would ask a stupid question of me. They would come to visit and say the exact wrong thing, and it would send me off into so yeah, I joked with friends that, we should write the book about all the things you should not say to somebody when they lose a family member, all the things you should not say to somebody when they've been in a serious accident. And don't
What
tell
are
me,
some of those things that people should avoid?
okay, well, with the loss situation, you don't ever say they're in a better place.
Mm.
Shut up. Just shut up. Just, like, maybe they're not. You don't know where they are. They're dead. What? No, actually, like, especially when it's like a tragic death, like a young person or something. No, they are not in a better. Okay, so that's one. You don't want to hear about their loss right
Mm.
now. I'm dealing with my loss. And, so people would come and tell me about the car accidents they've been in. Shut up. So now you want me to empathize with you? So now you want me to, like, feel what it felt like for you at that time? So that's going to really help me right now. Not. Um, early on when people would tell me, like about their whole process of making the chicken that they made for me, I
Mm.
couldn't even eat. Or they couldn't decide, were they going to make chicken or were they going to make pasta? But if they made pasta, and they're like going on and on about their process or whatever it was. And I'm like, I am merely struggling to make it to the next moment here. That's where I am. I'm trying really hard to be in the presence of another human being without screaming and crying at the top of my lungs right now. So, yeah, I mean, less talking, more listening is the very best advice. Compassionate nods. You don't have to say anything.
Hmm.
Look, tilt your head slightly to the side and nod. Or
Oh my
repeat, like
gosh.
that, this must be really hard. And then the person goes, yeah, it's really hard. This must really suck. Yes, it totally sucks. That's helpful.
Hmm.
Validate what the person is feeling.
Yeah, we've had several people on the podcast who have lost children, and
Ugh, I
they've
can't even
said,
imagine.
yeah, well, that's exactly what they said. They said you don't want to imagine. And I asked several of them, like I think a lot of people, they obviously they feel terrible about the situation. They want to do something to be helpful, but they avoid interacting with you because they don't know what to do. So,
That's
since
not
you have
helpful.
enough, yeah, it is, it sucks. But I asked them, so since you have enough space now from when it happened to now, so that you can give other people who wind up in this horrible situation some advice, what do you tell people? What's the best thing people can do to show support or to do something helpful when someone around them goes through this? And they said, just be there. Like, just be there. It's phone call. How you doing? It's go over to the house and watch a TV show with them or sit and have dinner with them and just be, you don't have to say anything. There's nothing you can say that's going to make it better. They're gone. They're not coming back. You can't unring the bell. The worst has already happened. There's no words to make it better, but just knowing that you have people around you that you can count on is the best thing you can do. And that to all of them have said that. I've
So I
noticed
want to
that with all
recommend
of
a
them.
podcast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since your listeners are podcast listeners, and that's what I was just doing, looking it up because I wanted to make sure I got the title correct. There's a
Sure.
phenomenal new, fairly new podcast called Worst Club Ever, a child loss podcast, and it's hosted
Mm,
by Allie Kramer, who lost her 3-year-old son to a horrific brain cancer. And she's a psychologist and also an actress. So she's just brilliant. And her husband is a composer and musician. And so they together have done this whole thing. And the first 3 episodes are about their journey and their child. And then they move on to interviewing experts. And for instance, a recent episode is having another child after loss,
mm.
what it's like to be my therapist. Oh, she interviews her own therapist. Finding a grief community, supporting a dying child, that sort of thing. See, now I've accidentally started the podcast. So anyway, I highly recommend that for people who are either facing that atrocious reality or have faced it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for sharing that. Any resource, again, we just want to expose people to resources, to knowledge, so they have as much information as they can to make good decisions to build the life that they want. So thank you very, very much
Yeah, it's called
for
Worst
sharing that.
Club Ever,
Yep.
which it is.
Yeah, I was going to say aptly named, I might add, aptly named. So you had talked earlier about, okay, so I'm a person that is productive, I'm a person that goes, I'm a person that accomplishes things, and now that's all gone. Like you can't do anything except exist, right?
Yeah, and try to heal, which
Yep.
is not a linear process. You
Mm.
expect each day is going to be better than the day before. Nope, didn't go that way. And then complications arise, and you have all kinds of new problems. When you're immobilized, we're not supposed to be immobilized. So when
Right.
your body is completely immobilized, other things happen that you then have to deal with, like kidney stones or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big fears is always blood clots, right? Especially in your
Right.
situation.
Right. Well, they put things on my legs that blew up and came down. Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I had really good medical care, so that was great. And but I required so much help. I mean, it was almost like a full-time job for my husband. And it's not like I slept for 6, 8 hours at night. No, I was up
Right.
constantly. So it was awful. Anyway, my kids also came back and were really helpful, as best they could. And wonderful friends. And here's the other thing, I'm a very involved part of a community that stresses caring for one another. So when people in my community are sick, an email goes out, who can supply a dinner, who can give a ride, this person needs rides to chemo, whatever. And we all show up and help one another. So as soon as this happened, the system went into effect for me. So we had people showing up here to walk the dog because I couldn't be left alone at all.
Mm.
Somebody had to walk the dog, somebody had to do everything. I mean, thankfully you could get groceries delivered, but yeah, so people were like making meals for us, spelling my husband so that he could sometimes get a little break, that sort of thing. So, yeah, being a part of a community. And also, one of the many things that I vowed during my recovery was that I was going to structure my life differently on the other end, so that I wasn't busy every minute of every day, so that I could show up for other people when they needed somebody to show up for them. And so I make a concerted effort to do that now. I've really slowed down. I mean, I'm still a very fast-paced person. I'm still a person who makes probably way too many plans and sees way too many people and talks to way too many people because I thrive on that, like you. And I need to get exercise every day. I need, now I meditate and I need to do this and that. And I volunteer and I help feed the homeless. Like I got 100 things. I'm on a board. I'm balancing lots of things, 3 grandchildren, 2 kids. But I try to limit myself to 3 things a day so that in between my things, I can multitask less. It's not good for you. Also, I'm getting older. We all are, right? So
Every day.
if we go a million miles an hour, we have a greater chance of falling and hurting ourselves. So I'm trying to slow down. It doesn't come easily to me, but I'm trying.
Yeah, that's a hard thing. My father-in-law is just is in his 80s now, and he is much less sure on his feet than he used to be. And we recently, actually, when my son got engaged, we rode back from, they came up and stayed with us for about a week, and they rode back to Cleveland from Cincinnati with us. And my wife is a chronic car sleeper. So, like, the minute the engine turns on and the tires hit the highway, she's asleep. And so I got a good chance to catch up with my in-laws, which was really nice time to spend with them. But I got to talk to him about that. And I just said, hey, look, as someone that cares a lot about you, I just want you to take care of yourself because I notice you're walking different and I notice that you're less sure on your feet and you're still in good health. But a fall is one of the most serious things that can happen to someone your age. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm not trying to doom and gloom you. But when someone breaks a hip, they have like, I think it's like a 65% chance of dying within 2 years of falling and breaking that hip. And like, we want you around for as long as we can get you. I don't want whatever happens that if someone's going to get you eventually. I don't want it to be self-inflicted. So use your walker or use your cane or, I've heard you're avoiding those things. Stop. I get it. I
It's so
get, you don't want to
standard.
do it.
People have, oh my God, we had to really, it took a lot to get my mom to use a walker. She actually ended up breaking both hips and rehabbing from both
Wow.
separately, 2 separate times. One, and
Mm,
then the next one 2 years later, rehabbed from both, which was extraordinary. So that is not what she died of or anything related to that.
yeah.
But osteoporosis is real, and some of us have it, and we need to I can't fall. I no longer do any kind of slidey sports. I don't even ride a bike. I'm like 2 feet on the ground because if I fall, I will break.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you had talked about, so you're immobilized because of your injuries, and you had to start dealing with the stuff you had not been dealing with. I'm interested to hear kind of how that process evolved as you were convalescing.
sure. Well, it was like reserving judgment in general on everybody and everything. People were trying to help. Maybe they didn't go about it the right way. My husband was doing his best, but he didn't always respond when I rang the bell that I needed something because he was caught up in what he was doing, whatever. So that was one thing to really just sort of take a deep breath and everybody is doing their best here. And gratitude, 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 and gratitude. So it is very hard to feel sorry for yourself and feel grateful at the same time. And what I learned is that gratitude will win out. It just will. So if I was feeling sorry for myself, which of course I was, um, I would then count my blessings. It's such a simple thing, right? Our
Mm,
parents told us to do this. We rolled our eyes. So I would say, well, at least. And then I had a long list of the at leasts. I lived. I didn't have a traumatic brain injury. I have a husband who works from home. He can, and for himself. So he can cut back a little bit for the short term and then he can work and take care of me. I have a community that's showing up. I have children that are showing up. I'm losing my paycheck for a long period of time, but we're not going to lose our house. Um, all that. I have good insurance, sort of all the things, and I can do this. That was my mantra. I can do this. It started the very second I realized that I had been hit by a car. My
mm,
first reaction was, really? Like, really, God or universe or whoever's controlling things? I haven't had enough. I've just gone through these three major, major losses. And then a second later, I was like, okay, let's do this. Meaning me. Like when I say let's, I mean, like I'm going to muster all of my resources and I'm going to get through this. Damn it. Right. I'm going to get through this, whatever it takes. So, and then I had to say that to myself many times during the day. When I first had to start walking with I wasn't allowed to put any weight on the whole right side of my body for 6 weeks. So I had to essentially, the left side wasn't so good either. I had to essentially hold all my body weight on the walker with my arms. Thankfully, I was in good shape and I could do that, sliding my left foot forward to get to the bathroom. Um, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Here's the thing, we talk to ourselves all the time, and often the messages that we're giving ourselves are not helpful. We say things like, who do you think you are?
mm.
Or, you know, you're not good enough. Or, yeah, you tried, but you didn't quite cut the mustard. So here's the problem. When we give ourselves negative self-talk, negative messages over and over again, we start to believe it.
Yeah.
The same is true if we give ourselves positive messages. If we say over and over and over again, you're doing great. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this. I can do this. You start to believe it. So I did that, and that was really good. Another one that I did that was enormously helpful was something that I've since learned is actually something that appears in the Talmud, which is an ancient Jewish text. And essentially, what it says in translated into English is, this too shall pass.
Mm,
When we are in the throes of despair, physical pain, emotional pain, terror, fear, whatever, it feels like it's going to be forever. When I was grieving over the loss of, pick a person, my sister, I didn't think it was ever going to be any easier than it was at that given moment. So when I was feeling the trauma of the accident and the physical pain and the fear and all of the stuff, I tried to tell myself over and over again, this is this moment. The one thing we can count on is change. An hour from now might be worse, but it's going to be different. Tomorrow it could be as bad, but it'll be different in some way. This will pass. And that's another thing that I think we can tell ourselves at our worst moments is I just have to get through this moment. I don't have to get through the next month right now because you can't even imagine what the next month is going to bring, but you can get through this moment. What do I have to do to get through this moment? Maybe it's control my breathing. Maybe it's take deep breaths and remember to breathe, because if we hold our breath, that's not good. Maybe it's asking for what we need. For some of us, asking for help is really hard. For me, it was because I can do it all. I
Mm.
don't need anybody's help. Well, I learned that that's not true. See the little creature on the couch behind me?
Yes.
And she's just in her sleep. She's making little sounds now. Moxie? So she was the best and she stayed with me. And if you have a pet, ask of that pet. Ask that pet to be with you, to be a source of unconditional love. They have a sixth sense. She knew not to jump anywhere near me. She knew to tone her energy down when she was around me because that's all I could take. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure I could give you 12 more, but those were the kinds of things I worked on that were enormously helpful and that I think are pretty universal and would be applicable to all different sorts of people in different situations.
Yeah, I love that. And yours was forced upon you. You didn't have a choice. You 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 had to learn, but um, for those out there that you're living your day-to-day life and you're just not happy with how things are going, or you feel unsettled or you feel anxious, all of the things that Joanne just listed are things that you can incorporate into your life that will help make it a little bit better. And I think that's the important thing that people have to remember is it rarely changes immediately, right? It's kind of like the overnight success that you see. Well, someone's been building that success for 10 years. You just didn't see all the grind and the pain and the suffering they went through until they made it onto the national stage or public view or whatever you want to call it. That's not overnight success. That's someone that had to work a long time to get there. That same iterative process is what's going to change your life. I call it the compound interest of life. That's what I call it.
It's
So,
great.
like everyone understands compound interest as it relates to money. Life works the same way. So, if you make bad food choices every day for 2 years, you're going to wind up unhealthy. If you make good food choices every day over 2 years, you're going to wind up healthy. Like, it's not going
Maybe,
to happen. Yeah,
maybe
true,
you're going to
true.
increase your chances.
Yes,
And
that's a
that's the
that's a
thing,
better yeah
because we
better way to
can't
say it.
control everything. Here, we can control what we can control, and that gives us better odds, right? So I'm trying to increase the odds for myself. I don't do everything right. I have some bad habits. We all do.
Yep.
But I no longer beat myself up about that. I accept that I'm a human being, and there are certain ways in which I can, improve my odds of being healthy and around for a good long while. And connection is a big part. So I think you're going to be around for a long time, Joe, because it's a priority for you. But being connected to people and going out and having experiences, those are things that make us a lot healthier as we get older. It's people who are isolated that often don't do well.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I think that's all right. I have nothing to add to that. I think that's well said. What was so you'd never written a book. You said you'd written, but did not written a book. What was the most surprising thing you learned or experienced as you wrote your book through that
That I
process?
haven't, the most surprising thing was that I had the attention span to do it because I don't have a long attention span. I'm your classic, undiagnosed ADD person.
Squirrel.
And so my career was perfect, newscasts. The news happens, you write about it, you deliver the news, and you're on to the next thing. And that's really how my whole career was, like short things, do it quickly, get it out there, start the next thing. And this is the opposite. also being a journalist, your opinion and your personal feelings are not relevant. Memoir's the opposite of that. I needed to learn to write dialogue. I needed to learn to write scene. I needed to really study the craft of memoir to be able to write a memoir. So it was a 5-year process. And the biggest surprise is that I kept at it, that I didn't settle, that I wrote the best book I could write with the help of editors and others. Um, and I'm proud of it. So I'm not doing another one, I don't think.
Hmm.
But I should never say never because who knows? But it's an extremely arduous process to write a book, and it's very expensive, and very few people make money on their books. I mean, it's really money out, not in. I'm sure that you don't do this podcast to make money. I'm just guessing,
No, that's exactly right.
right? I had to write that book. There was no question about it. I had something I had to say, and I really wanted to say it. And then COVID made it a little bit easier for me because I left my full-time job. So then I had time, and I had to sit right here in this chair where I am right now. And so I poured myself into the process of rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and and then you finish the book and you're not done, because then you have to make a zillion more decisions, and then you have to market it. Nobody markets it for you. Even
Hmm.
if you hire a publicist, they do a certain amount. Um, I ended up being my own publicist because I had hired somebody and she wasn't very good, and I'd spent $3,500 and it felt like I had thrown it out the window. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to throw more money at that. So I became my own publicist. But and you really only have 6 months, because after that your book's old news and nobody's interested once it's been out for 6 months. So
Really? I didn't know that.
except you, because here you are interviewing me. Thank you.
I didn't know that was the shelf life of I mean, I get that it's still in publication and whatnot, but like once it gets, does it just because there's new books published and you wind up further down the list? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, people want what's hot. News, certainly getting interviews, on, well, podcasts are different, but getting interviews on, sort of traditional media, newspapers, magazines, all of that sort of thing, appearances. I can still, and I do, promote myself to book clubs. It's one of my favorite things to do. And for your listeners, if anybody listening has a book club, I am always happy to join your meeting via Zoom and answer any questions and talk to the folks who've read the book. So that's just an unconditional offer for book clubs, or any other sorts of clubs, where you want a speaker. But I love public speaking. I do a fair amount of it. Um, but it's a harder sell when the book's been out for, in my case now, what, 2 years?
Hmm. Yeah, I get it. That makes sense. And I've never written a book. I don't actually have a burning desire to write a book. Doesn't mean I won't, but I'm with you. Like if you're doing something for the sake of money, especially something that's creative, it's probably going to suck, just to be straightforward. You know, if it's not deeply personal, if you're not doing it because you really want to do it, like, I don't know, it just feels like a big waste of time to me. I rarely hear someone that said, I just did this for the money and it was an awesome product because it relates to a creative product, whether it be writing or film or television or poetry or music or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Well, this is why this phase of my life is so wonderful, because I'm doing exactly what I want to do, and every day, really, and very busy, very engaged, and very creative. I have a podcast every 2 weeks. It's called In This Story, and they are my essays set to music, musings about life. Each episode is under 5 minutes. So
Nice.
it's In This Story with Joanne Greene every 2 weeks.
Sorry, I want to take a note. Hang on.
Sure.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I'll check it out.
Great. It's fun. It's fun, and some of them are funny, some not so funny, but I try to do a balance.
So I've learned that sometimes even when I think things are funny, other people don't. So
Well, there is that. There is that.
I have I have a very dark sense of humor, but I will say that lots of studies have shown that people with dark senses of humor are typically very intelligent people. So that's my defense
Oh,
for
and
me
they live
finding.
much longer.
I hope so. I might live forever if that's the case. I hope so.
There you go.
So one of the things I do, well, so first, so the book is called By Accident, a memoir of letting go. I love the title. I'm assuming you thought of it.
I did.
Yes.
I did. I did.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll have a link for all the listeners. There'll be a link in the show notes, so you can go right to typically Amazon, but whatever Joanne gives us, we'll include
So
that
I
as
will say
well.
this, if you want to support your local bookstore, try bookshop.org
Mm.
or just go to your local bookstore and ask them to order it. It's distributed by Simon and Schuster, published by She Writes Press. And it's available as an audiobook also on audible.com, which I read. And it is an ebook and it's a paperback. So those are the choices.
So you have no excuse, everyone listening, you have no excuse not to consume this product in some way, shape, or form because it's
And then
audio.
reach out to me. And then reach out
Yeah.
to me. I should share my website and hopefully you'll put it in the show notes because I respond to every email I receive through the website. It's joanne-green.com. Simple.
Another Joanne Greene got there before you.
Yep.
I know how that goes. And yes, we'll
Right.
absolutely include it. We'll absolutely include it in the show notes. And yeah, that's great. So one of the things I do, I because I don't want to disenfranchise anyone. I feel like when we have people on, we cover a lot of territory, we ask a lot of questions, and that's all great. But I don't want to miss something that's of value or that's important to you simply because I didn't do a good job of covering all the bases. So, is there anything that I haven't asked you, or is there a topic that we haven't talked about that you feel strongly about that you want to talk about while we're in front of the audience before we wrap up?
Just be kind. Be kind to one another. It's, we live in a society where our nerves are frayed and people are just so quick to attack in one way or another verbally or beep their horn when we're out there. If everybody could just slow down and realize that we're all just humans trying to get by, and if we could try to focus on what we have in common rather than what separates us, I think it would be a kinder, saner world. So um, I'm thinking about that a lot lately, and really, if the theme of your show is how to live a more meaningful, purposeful life, I think these are questions to ask ourselves. What, when do you feel truly engaged? What are the things in life that you do that make you feel really alive and really good about yourself? Those are the things you want to be doing more of.
Mm.
And sometimes we get so caught up in the rat race, so caught up in the shoulds. I should be doing this. I should be going to the gym. I should be making more money. I should be, and we end up missing the things that are the most meaningful. And so ask yourself those questions and self-reflect and be kind.
I love it. I love it. Great advice. And yeah, that's a great place to leave it. So, Joanne, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the time.
I had a blast. It was
I
great.
did too. I loved our conversation. Absolutely loved it. So, and I'll check out your podcast. I really appreciate letting us know about it.
Thank you so much. Be well, Joe.
All right. You too. Have a great weekend.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.
Good job, Joanne. Thank you so much.
Great. No, I thought that was terrific.
That was awesome. Yeah, totally awesome. Loved it.
Good. Well, let me know what people say or think or when it's coming. Yeah, well, you said when it's coming out. It's October 13th, right?
Yep. Yep.
Were you a ginger? Did you have red hair?
I used to before I went gray. Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to my mom about that the other day. So my like I told you, my son's fiance, she's very curious about me. And so
Mhm.
she asked my wife for pictures of what I looked like when I was a little kid. And so I had like Ronald McDonald red hair, and my mom, it's curly, by naturally curly, and my mom loved it, so she wouldn't cut it. So I had like a redheaded afro because like she kept it really long and it was curly. And then I had the freckles. I have lots of freckles because I'm super Irish. And then I've always just been kind of feisty with a big mouth. And so I had to learn to fight when I was young because I kept getting beat up because I wouldn't shut up.
But
But she's,
are you a big guy?
I am, yes. I'm like 6'3", 230. Yeah, I'm a big
Oh
guy.
wow. Oh
Um,
wow. I'm
and so,
I weigh about 112.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm 5'2".
My mom is exactly your size. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. My daughter-in-law, future daughter-in-law said, "Oh, I'm gonna have the cutest babies. Look how cute he was." And then she said, "What happened?"
Well, at least she wants to have babies. Let's just stop right there. They don't all want to have babies. So yay for that.
Yeah, it's a different world. It's I don't know. Like there's a lot of things different than when I grew up, and like so I'm you're what, a boomer, right? And I'm Gen X.
I'm 71 and a half.
Yeah. Yep. So you're a little bit ahead of me on the curve. I'm 53. And I don't know. It seems like, yeah, the world was complicated when we grew up, but it doesn't seem as complicated as it is now. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
overthinking it, but
No, I think it's tough. We're in a tough moment, a tough time, and
yeah.
yeah, no, I know. I'm really trying to be very present for my kids and grandkids. I mean, and they're very privileged, and but four big careers, and the kids are shuttled here and there, and yeah, it's. But you've got something to look forward to because being a grandparent is the best thing in the world, the best. And
That's
maybe
what
you'll get a girl.
that's what my wife is counting on it because she's going straight to heaven because she's dealt with me and my three sons for 30 plus years now. So well, that's always our joke is like, hey, we should enjoy our time here because when it's all over, both of us are going different directions and I know which
Oh,
one I'm
stop.
going.
You do. You are not. You are not. All right, I got to run, but great to meet you, Joe. And
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. Really
I look
appreciate the
forward to
time.
hearing it. All right, bye
Okay,
bye.
sounds good. Thank you. So, just loved our conversation with Joanne. What a neat lady. Love her experience. Love her willingness to share about things. Love that she is more than willing to share her perspective on what she's learned in life, and not in a preachy way, not in a judgmental way, but in a way that says, "Hey, here's what I have learned. You can take it for what it's worth, but I've got a lot of experience, and hopefully, I can help someone by sharing this with them, and hopefully, I can help someone by sharing my experiences." With them. And we just absolutely love people that are willing to do that. And we just offer another big thank you to Joanne for coming on. And remember, her book is in the show notes. Lots of ways you can consume it: ebook, Amazon, audiobook. Go out and check it out, right? By Accident, a memoir of letting go. And absolutely love it. So thank you again, Joanne, for coming on and doing the podcast. So James puts it up over every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. Links to all social media accounts available there. We publish a newsletter every weekday. You can subscribe to there. And like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. Helpful for us if you're able to do that. We're going to keep finding awesome people. We're going to keep giving you great subjects to listen to build the life that you want. You don't want to miss any of that stuff because it's awesome stuff. Make sure you catch our next episode. We'll see you there.